Hi, I'm Chanel and welcome to this week's reading vlog. So this week I am doing a read it or unhaul it for my TBR. And what that means is pretty much I'm going to read the first chapter of some books that are on my TBR and I will decide if I'm going to unhaul it, as in not even bother to read the book, if I'm going to give it 50 pages before deciding, or if I'm going to read the whole thing. I've already read all of the first chapters of all the books, so I will go through and let you know what I'm doing. So here we have Understanding Modern Spirituality. I read a few chapters of these because the chapters are only about 3-4 pages each. It's very quick and easy to read, but I don't really have a good hang of what the book is like. So I think I just will continue reading on with this and give my thoughts at the end of it. I think it's going to be a very easy read, so I thought, why not? And then we have Women of Myth. So this was a little disappointing. The goddesses don't all have a picture, and if you're talking about goddesses, you would assume that you would at least include one illustration of all of them, but only a couple of goddesses have illustrations, and I found this to be quite basic. So I've decided to unhaul this one, so I will not be reading this one. The next book that I picked up was Audition. So this is a science fiction book about 3 giants on a spaceship, and they have to keep talking because if they don't keep talking, the spaceship stops and they continue to grow. So they're running out of space. So it took a lot of pages before I realized there are no chapters in this book. And all of this is just running dialogue, just constant talking between the giants. And it's not for me at all. I don't find it entertaining. It was too much. It was overwhelming and overstimulating for me. So this book I will also be unhauling. And then I read After the Rain. So this is about a Fijian woman who lives in Australia with her husband. They've just moved into their new home and they're about to start a family. This is litfic, and I'm like this with litfic. I like the way it's written, but it might just be too much of a mundane story for me, but I've decided to give this 50 pages before deciding whether or not I'm going to DNF it. So this is a 50 pages scenario. The next book that I picked up was Love and Gelato. So this one was about a teenage girl whose mother dies of cancer, and her last dying wish is for her daughter to go to Italy to live with this guy. It turns out that this guy is actually her biological father. Up until this point, she was unaware who her biological father was, and already I find that very unbelievable. But pretty much her mother doesn't tell her anything more than, here's your dad and I want you to spend a year living in Italy. So she goes there and he's a caretaker of a World War II cemetery and he lives on the land as a groundskeeper. And this was just frustrating. So the writing and dialogue itself was just very, very basic and it felt very young. Not only did her mother not give her any answers as to like, well, what's the story between you and this guy? How did this come about? What's the deal? Why have I never heard about him up until this point? And I'm like, okay, it's pretty shitty to not give your child any answers before you like peace out and die. But whatever, I could sort of excuse that. But then she goes there and she's still got all of these unanswered questions. Like, who are you? And like, why are you not being in our lives? But she doesn't ask him. And I read 66 pages and she still hasn't. And I'm like, no. Immediately, you're going to be like, what's the story? How did you and Mum meet? Why have you not been here? What happened? Why did she leave Italy? It's just not believable. So that just frustrated me beyond all heck. She does get introduced to an Italian-American boy there, and obviously it's supposed to be a romance, but it just started feeling way too young. And like I said, the whole thing of like, she still hadn't asked the guy, like, what's the history? What's the story? She'd asked his friend, who also lives on the grounds at the visitor center. She's like, well, it's not my place to tell you. I can't believe your mum and your dad haven't told you anything, but you know, you're going to have to ask them. And I'm like, no. So I read 50 pages of this and I DNF'd it at that point. So that one was a 50 pages and then I chose to keep reading and I've DNF'd it already. And then I picked up King's Bride. So this is a fantasy book and it's a Beauty and the Beast retelling. So in the first chapter, you've got a girl in a village and she's waiting for the men to come home from a battle, one of whom is her brother and the other one is her brother's friend, and her brother's friend's like, can you go away so I can ravish your sister? I'm like, oh, okay, she's already in a relationship, but obviously that's not the endgame relationship, clearly. So It's okay. It was very basic. It was very just like standard fantasy, but I will continue reading that one because I am a sucker for a Beauty and the Beast retelling. I can't help myself. So I will keep reading that one. And then I picked up Legendborn, and I would say that out of all of the books, first chapters that I've read, this one was the most interesting. So this one opens up with, once again, a parent being killed, this time in a car accident. And it was on the morning that her and her mother had a fight. So she's got obviously remorse and regret over the last words she'd spoken to her moms. And then right at the end of the chapter, there's a brief mention, oh, but you know, there's magic. We have magic in this world. So I did like the writing style. This will be one of those cases where, is it too young or is it fine? YA fantasy tends to be okay, but we'll have to wait and see. So that will be a 50 pages wait and see book. And then the last book that I picked up to try out for the chapter was When the Earl Met His Match. This is a Stacy Reid novel. This one opens up with a lady walking through a forest, coming across a starving dog. She tries to feed it, nothing happens, and there's a very angry young girl comes along and is like, oh, I've been told to give this letter to the first idiot that I see, and gives her the letter and then storms off. And in the letter is the dog's owner saying, I'm the dog's owner. I love this dog. His name is Wolf. I am unfortunately dying, and I need someone to take care of Wolf, to use sign language commands for him to, you know, respond to you. So she decides to take care of the dog. So she just adopts a dog. I'm assuming that the love interest may be the dog's former owner who's dying, but I'm like, it's pretty shitty just sending the dog out with like your little kid system. You like find someone to take it. I don't know. It was okay. Like, it's a very average beginning to a book. So I am going to push through. It's a Stacy Reid novel, so I will read this one in total. So I did Unhaul 2 immediately. I then unhauled Love and Gelato after reading 50 pages. I will be probably reading this one in its entirety. And then After the Rain, King's Bride, and Legendborn, I will read 50 pages and then touch base with you guys to see whether I am going to DNF and unhaul them or if I'm going to continue reading them. Today is my daughter's birthday party, so I don't know how much reading I'm actually going to get done today. We're off to see The Haunted Mansion. Hopefully it's not too scary. They're all 12 and it is PG, but I don't know. We'll see what it's like. So I'm going to have my hands full with a bunch of tween girls, but I will touch base with you at some point.
She wasn't being friendly.
Hello, hello. We've got Sylvie here. I got my beautiful Sylvie. So I have read some of the books. So we have, what did I read? I read When the Earl Met His Match. Oh, no. Oh, no. This was not for me. I think that it's important when you have books that contain a pregnancy trope that is in the synopsis. So this woman had sex with this guy that she liked. He was beneath her station. Her parents refused to allow them to marry. They paid him some money and he went away willingly. But lo and behold, she's pregnant with his baby. So in this book, the gentleman is a mute Earl. He was lovely and I liked his character, but I cannot read about a woman who is pregnant with another man's child. She was 6 months pregnant too, not just a little bit, like 6 months, big belly. And she's sitting on her new husband's lap. And they're making out and then he can feel the baby kicking through her belly. I don't... Do pregnant women have needs? Yes. Do I want to read about babies moving around while their mother's getting it on? No, I don't. That does nothing for me. So I could not continue with this book. I could not continue with it. It gave me the ick. I can't constantly have it brought to my attention that there's a baby moving around in her stomach. Like, no. So... this was not for me. I'm taking a break from Stacy Reid. I'm going to try some other historical romance authors because I do like reading historical romance. It's my favorite kind of romance besides fantasy. So I do want to find some other authors because, yeah, unfortunately Stacy Reid, while she's got books I absolutely freaking loved, the majority of them have tropes and situations that I'm just not a fan of. So I'm going to try some other authors in the meantime, but I am unhauling that book. So that book is a DNF. I gave it 66 pages and then I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. And then I read 50 pages of Legendborn. So it's interesting. There is a magic system in play. There's a tall, dark, handsome, rude stranger, obviously, to do with this. I don't know though. Eddie's feeling a bit young. She is at university or college, so I assume she's 18, but then it said, could she be 16? I don't know, but I have a feeling this might go down the path of being too young. I will read a bit more of it. So like I said, I have read 50 pages, but I don't know. I'm like this with it. So I will read it. But out of all the ones that I had to read some more pages of to determine whether or not I was going to continue, King's Bride has definitely just bolted ahead. I was like, wow, okay, because the first chapter was like, it was okay. It was pretty cool. Okay, so as I mentioned before, she has a lover. His name is Rune. He is a demon slayer. He's delicious. Okay, so already I'm like, oh no. If he's her lover right at the start of the book, and this is meant to be a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and there's a Beast Ice King, obviously he's not going to stay her lover. So I hate that. It's like, don't give me a relationship and a love interest I really like if they're not endgame, you know? They have to be a Tamlin for me to ship them with somebody else afterwards. They can't be perfect. And then, oh, well, she can't be with him. She's got to be with her. Oh, so I don't know how that's going to turn out because some things have happened. This book is full on. So this is fast paced. Stuff was happening immediately. And I'm like, holy crap, what a ride. There was some things that had happened in her past, very vicious, brutal. I don't want to give anything away, but man, this chick has seen some shit. She's gone through some shit. Her father is a piece of shit. But she's awesome. I love her character. I like her siblings. She obviously ends up, you know, having to go with the Beast, the Ice King, who seems to be, he's not Fae, so to speak, but he seems to be like a god. And she's just like, I want to kill this bitch. I want to kill this bitch for what he's done to my family and everything else, and rightly so. And so she's trying to find a way to kill him. So at the moment, she's his bride. She's in his castle. She's already attempted murder upon him a second time, but failed. She's making deals with all these other entities, trying to find out what his weakness is. And they're just giving her like all of these riddles that we all know. They all end in like, oh, you'll find out how to kill him, but you're going to be really upset about it. And it's going to cause you pain and you're going to wish you didn't know. And I'm like, oh, because by the time she finds out how to kill him, she'll love him, right? And she won't want to do it anymore, but then she's probably going to have to. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting book. There's a lot of different magical entities in there. Like I said, I like Saniva. That's her name. It means sun. And of course, she's married to the Ice King. But I like it. And if I wasn't going to my child's party, I would definitely have just read it all in one day. So it's got me hooked in there. It's very quick, you know, easy to understand, good world building, good characters, plot, good pacing. So yeah, the first chapter definitely didn't do it enough justice, but I'm enjoying it. So I will probably update you tomorrow with what I thought about it. So the books that I'm going to continue reading from this Read or Unhaul challenge are King's Bride, Modern Spirituality, After the Rain, possibly. I still haven't read 50 pages of After the Rain, so I'm hoping to do that later today so I can decide whether or not to keep reading or unhaul that one. And then Legendborn, which I'm still after the 50 pages about, so I might give it 100 and then say, do I want to keep going or is it not up my cup of tea? So those are the is it 4 books? Yes, 4 books that I will be continuing on with for this reading vlog. Good morning. So I have finished reading King's Bride. Okay, I gave this 4 stars. It was a good time. So this is just a pretty much typical fantasy book. You've got fantastical creatures like fae, demons, gods, wargs, werewolves, pixies, the whole shebang. You've got fierce warrior women who have gone through trauma and loss and grief, and then the very typical enemies to lovers trope that goes on, being married off to the king, another trope. You might have heard me mention at the start of the thing that there was a lover that she had named Rune, and I was like, why are you putting her with this guy from the beginning when we know he's not going to be endgame? I'm not going to say how that pans out because I don't want to spoil it, but it's a very typical trope that's involved in that. So I was like, okay, that's what that was. But to be honest, I didn't mind it. You know, it was fine. It was okay. So Saniva is a great main character. I liked her. She was very fiery, very zesty. She makes mistakes. She learns. She loves. There was a lot of death in this. So normally a few characters, 1 or 2 might get killed off, a lot get killed off. So this author was not afraid to slay her characters, to just end them in brutal ways. You're like, okay, another death call. That was full on. There was good world building. There was interesting magic systems. The Ice King, who's also the god of death, kind of reminds me of that Russian god of death and winter. I want to say it's Morozkov. I can't remember, but that's who they remind me of. They were very similar to all of like the Russian literature fantasy books that I've read. There was spice. There was spice in this. I wasn't expecting the smut, because this author's other series, I think I'm 3 or 4 books into it, is so PG when it comes to sex scenes. I just thought this author was not capable of doing that because it's so chaste in that one. But this was spicy. This was a smut-tastic. So I was like, all right, I'm down. I'm here for it. I enjoyed myself. You know, is it amazing? Is it super well written? Is it really cleverly done and intricate? No, but it's a fun time. I was entertained. And I like being entertained. And it was a easy to get into, fast-paced fantasy book. And I like that. You know, I like it. So it's got all the tropes that I do like. There were some that I didn't like, but overall, I did enjoy my time with it. This is part of a series, I think, but it can sort of go as a standalone. I am perfectly content to not continue it, but I'm also open to maybe continuing it. But either way, I was left very satisfied. And yeah, I had a good time. So 4 stars for that one. And the last books that I have decided to continue on with, obviously this one, which I plan to read in full probably. This one, which I'm going to give 50 pages and then see how I feel. And then Legendborn, I'm going to continue on to 100 pages and see how I feel. So I'll let you know once I have done that. I am planning to go to the city today with my mum. Got to drop my kids off to their dad's house because it's his turn for 2 days to take care of them. I'm planning on buying myself a little birthday present for my upcoming birthday in November. I'll be 38, so I'm going to the city to get myself a pair of sunnies. And yeah, that's my plan for today. So I'm sure I'll be able to update you with some kind of book at some point, but I'll chat to you then. Okay, so I have read 50 pages of After the Rain, and I am going to DNF it. It is a very sort of domestic novel between a husband and wife, and it's just... that's a little too dull for me. I need some sort of either thriller, mystery element, or paranormal, fantasy, magical thing. It's slice of lifey, but not enough for me to be captivated by it. Like the writing is fine. It's just not spectacular, and I'm finding myself bored. So I'm deciding to DNF. Hello. So I just read 200 pages of Legendborn. So this seems to be set upon Arthurian legend. So there are these things called Merlins and Scions and Squires and all that jazz. So that's like the basis of this world building and magic system. This book is so info dumpy, so infinite. There's multiple instances where they just go into a whole multiple page info dump of information. And whilst I appreciate that the author has set up an intricate world building and magic system, the way that the information is relayed is just too much. Every time she meets someone, it's like, let me tell you about all of this. What do you mean you don't know about that? That's how this actually works. I'm like, no, man, that's not the way I like to get information about the world. So yeah, I hated that. The book itself does feel too young for me. So the protagonist is 17 and she's in school. So going forward, YA fantasy, they have to be older than 18. They can't be in school. So that might limit a lot of the YA fantasy that I'm going to pick up. But yeah, I just don't care about going to classes. And like I said, it does seem young. And that hot, dark, troubled boy that she met at the fire, he's just too problematic. It's too much of him like aggressively challenging her and wanting to kill her. It's just, it's gone too far that way where it's like, it's no longer attractive. It's like, you are actually threatening me often and you are being gross about it. Like, he's a bully. So I don't like the love triangle that's sort of being hinted at so far. I considered pushing through to find out what she is, because she's like not a Merlin, but she's not a this, but she's not a demon, but what is she? But I don't care. I'm 200 pages in and I thought, do I just continue to push through quite so I can find out what kind of magical being Bree is? And then I'm like, no, I just don't care. I haven't formed a connection to any of the characters. Like I said, it's just, for me, it's coming off too young. So I know that that's a me thing and not the book thing, obviously. So I'm DNFing it after 200 pages. It's a lot of time I've invested, but it's fine. It's fine. Once again, I will be a bit more selective when it comes to YA fantasy. So that is an unhaul, I guess. I have one book left, which is that modern spirituality one. So we'll see how I go with that later today, and I'll update you then. Hello. So I've finished reading this one. Not a good time, my dudes. Not a good time. I'll see if I can get Nova in the, but then I'm dark. That's probably better, but I know I look wrecked. I looked rickety wrecked, son, and that's because I'm exhausted. Honestly, socializing 2 days in a row is not for me. I can't do it. I'm wiped. I'm probably going to have a flare up and peace out for the next 2 days in a row. But I did finish this, and if I was going to rate it, I'd give it 1 star. But lately I find I have been not rating nonfiction books if they're less than a 4, because I just feel a bit weird about it. Most of the time it's because perhaps there's nothing new information-wise that I've gained from reading that book, so I don't want to give it a low rating just because I didn't learn anything new. But yeah, so lately with nonfictions, I'm not going to rate them if they're lower than a 4. So, but this one would be a 1. So this person's opinions and viewpoints on modern spirituality don't align with mine whatsoever. Even though this is meant to be sort of new world, new agey spiritualism, the theologies that are mentioned the most are Christian. So Jesus, God, and the angels. There's mentions of things like karma, but otherwise no other deities or religious things are sort of mentioned in this. There's a brief mention of things like Lemuria and Atlantis, so starseed stuff, but not hardly anything. This also started talking to about like not connecting to the energy of Gaia because you don't know what kind of beings are in Gaia, and there are ones that could cause you harm, and that kind of like negative, alarmist spiritual thinking isn't for me. I don't really vibe with it. The way this book was structured was in a way that it's just not, there's no flow to it, and it just felt very pedestrian. It felt very colloquial. It felt very civilian-esque of just one lady's opinions that I don't necessarily agree with. So this book definitely wasn't for me. This week's Unhaul It, many unhauls. Like almost everything was unhauled. Sorry, I've got to throw my little cat's whale who's seen better days. He's seen better days. I unhauled almost everything. There are only 2 books I think I read in total, in full. This one, which is a 1-star book, and then, thank God, King's Bride, which was a 4-star. So big disparity there. Thank God for that 4-star. Otherwise, I would probably be in a worse mood than I am. But look, the plus side of the Unhauling It is I didn't spend a lot of time on books I didn't like. So I did DNF some very, very quickly. Some of the other books, as you know, I did at least 50 pages, and then Legendborn, I did a whole 200 before I finally realized this isn't for me. The good news is my TBR list has been brought way down. I think it's at like 24 books. But unfortunately, I'd say about 60% of those to be read books are releases that are coming in the future. So I cannot knock them off. They're going to be sitting there for a while, but they have to stay there because otherwise I will forget what series I'm reading. I just forget that, I was reading that series. If I don't put the upcoming untitled, no picture yet book on my TBR, I'll forget. And then I'll never finish that series. I'll never know how it ended because I just read so many books. So I do have to put upcoming, like this book's going to be coming out in the future. Otherwise I will forget about it. And if it's a series that not many booktubers are reading, like I'll never put a upcoming Emily Henry book out, because a booktuber for sure will read that when it comes out. Same with like Abby Jimenez. I will be alerted to a new book via booktube. But for, you know, older series, no, I always have to make sure I've included them so that I can finish them. And so yesterday we took my daughter for her party, which was to see Haunted Mansion. She loved it. Her friends liked it. I thought it was funny. It was definitely well cast, so props for great casting. However, my 9-year-old, it was too scary for her. It's rated PG, but the horror elements are quite frightening. Like the ghosts are not friendly ghosts. They are gruesome. They chase the children. They try to kill them. And they do that like jerky, creepy as ghost thing. And she spent most of the time not watching the movie. So she was on my lap, head turned. So she didn't have a good time. So I would say if your children don't do well with scary imagery, this is not for them. So I was a bit disappointed in that, because PG, I normally think, oh, it'll be fine. And if it's PG because of swearing, I guess, or sexual themes, whatever, it probably is fine. But PG for horror elements, I now know to be like, go watch it by yourself first before you take your 9-year-old. So yeah, she ended up having to sleep with me last night. So I had to sleep next to her. So I didn't sleep. That's also why I am absolutely burnt out today. I did not sleep. But yeah, overall, I thought the movie was quite entertaining. And before I finish off this vlog, I just had to mention the most bizarre thing happened today. So I went into the city with my mum because I wanted to buy myself a pair of Chanel sunglasses for my birthday. They only had 10 pairs in their flagship store. So this is their main store, multiple levels, 10 pairs of sunglasses. So didn't get any sunglasses today, but on the way back to the car, I'm standing at the pedestrian lights with my mum. I look into the building next to me that happened to have all glass windows for their foyer. And who was standing there chatting to someone? Mr. Italiano. So I don't know if you remember this because the dating diaries was so long ago, but the only person I went on 2 dates with was this Italian guy who was a polyglot. So he spoke like 8 languages. And he was intelligent, we got along, but he had the worst communication style. It took 6 weeks for me to go on 2 dates with this person because they were that sporadic with texting. And then he didn't have a car, and I didn't want to be a taxi driver. So anyway, it didn't work. We weren't compatible. But he was standing there. And I just thought to myself, what are the odds? Because where he works, that wasn't his employment. But he sometimes has clients, and he will go to his client's headquarters, and obviously that must be a new client of his. But he happened to be standing in the foyer that happened to have glass windows at the same time I was standing there, and I never go to the CBD. I really just don't like it. It's a pain to park in. There's a lot of people. It's like anxiety plus for me. But I decided on this one day I'm going to go with my mum, and I'm like, universe, what the heck? What does this mean? Does this mean anything? Like, I hate it when stuff like that happens, because this person who, you know, didn't work out, I'm like, well, don't bring them back into my sphere in this random bloody way. Like, this is nutso. So, I don't know. I don't know what it was meant to tell me, but I was just freaked out. I was like, oh my God, Mum, that's that guy. But it was pretty funny. But anyway, that's everything for this week. And until next time, stay well, Star Child.